Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Kitchen Design Experts. This is the channel that tells you all you need to know about kitchens, kitchen design and kitchen appliances. Today we're going to be talking about what we consider to be the top 10 tips that you need to consider when you yourself are designing your own fitted kitchen. So first of all, what are in our opinion, the top 10 tips that we use when we are designing kitchens for our clients? Number one, if you can, I'd always try to put my oven at waist height. We hate bending down to ovens, and an awful lot of people have to consider future-proofing the kitchen, and it's always wise, if you can, to try and make sure that your oven is up at waist height. Similarly, microwaves. There's usually always a microwave in a kitchen, and again we absolutely hate seeing a microwave freestanding on a worktop. It doesn't look great, and it's also pinching valuable worktop space. So if you can, build your microwave into either a housing, in relation to the oven perhaps, or maybe even into a wall unit. Number three, if you are having more than one tall housing, cabinet, larder cupboard, fridge housing or whatever in your kitchen, try to put all the tall housings together. It makes a big difference to how the kitchen looks. If you have them at opposite ends of a kitchen or opposite sides of a kitchen, it tends to make the room feel quite small. So try and combine them together, ideally at the end of one of the runs. Always have your sink and hob at least within reach of each other. Not right next to each other, but within reach of each other. So if ever you have to top up a hot pan, it's just either a turnaround or a little way down one worktop, so you can access both sink and hob together. However, at the same time, always try to have the hob and sink with enough worktop space either around them or actually between them, because in essence this is your main prep space. Carrying on with the sink theme, always try to have your dishwasher fairly close to a sink. Obviously, it's not essential, but it's useful for plumbing, of course, but also if you're rinsing a pan, getting some of the residue off a pan and then putting it in the dishwasher, it's nice to have them fairly close together. So I'd always consider keeping my dishwasher and sink almost next to each other if you can. The next tip would be, if you're having an island, make sure that from a size point of view, the island is proportional to the room that it's going in. Sometimes we see really small islands that are, frankly, it looks like a pea on a drum. It's so small, it doesn't look right sitting within the room. And sometimes we see islands that are far too big. You can hardly walk around them and they absolutely dominate the space. So try and keep your island proportional to the space it's going in. If you actually have a bar in your kitchen or an eating area of any description where people are going to sit down and eat, try and ensure that that is located on the far side of a kitchen, not in the main cooking area, not in the main prep space. Try and have it more isolated out of the kitchen if you can. Then when you're considering designing wall units in a kitchen, try not to crowd the windows, especially if the windows are quite small. If you bring your wall cupboards right up to the side of the window reveal, you have the depth of the wall cupboard itself added to the reveal, and it just crowds those windows. If you can, leave at least a little bit of wall space each side of the window, and if you're doing that, try and make that wall space the same, so it's symmetrical if you can, because it looks again so much better. And finally, as a top tip, try and avoid hard to clean little gaps and spaces. Try and make sure these are filled. I'm especially talking about the space over the top of a wall cupboard or housing. If that comes quite close to the ceiling, fill it in. It's neither use nor ornament to anybody as far as storage is concerned, and it just becomes a dirt trap. So those are 10 very basic suggestions that you should bear in mind when you're designing a kitchen. Now what I'd like to do is to show those in practice. And the way I'm going to do that is to take a good look at the kitchen that we've just actually installed for ourselves. We moved house about 2 years ago, and when we were looking at to be honest with you, whichever house we looked at, we were always going to change the kitchen. And the house we finally moved into, when you see the pictures, the original kitchen wasn't too bad. But when you actually analyse it, it didn't really conform to the 10 tips that we've just discussed. And obviously our new kitchen does conform to them. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the plans of the old and the new and show you how we've actually used those 10 tips to design our own fitted kitchen. So let's start with the original plan of the kitchen that we were going to inherit. Now, as you can see, it's quite a large room, this, and at the bottom, where you can see that little space at the bottom, that goes through to a dining area, and it's almost open plan. On this plan, you can actually see that, first of all, the cooker was a range cooker. Yes, that means we had to bend down to it, which is one of the tips we try and avoid. And the range cooker, as you can see, is actually quite close to an interior door. And again, if you can't avoid having an appliance close to an entry door, it's definitely recommended. Now, even though this is quite a large kitchen, you can see that the sink and the hob are rather compressed. And the worktop space between the hob top, the hob of the range that is, and the sink bowl is very small. And in essence, this is your prep space. So in this lovely big kitchen, you can see that the prep space is actually quite small. And that's because of the position that the range cooker has been put in. If you look on the right hand wall, you'll see that that's where the dishwasher is, which is frankly too far away from the sink. So that needs sorting out. Like I said in our top tips, you want the dishwasher as close to the sink as you can possibly get it. If you look down at the bottom right hand side, you can see the words American fridge freezer, and there's actually another tall housing next to that as well. Now the tall things therefore are together, and they are on the end of a run, so they do conform to what we try to achieve with our top 10 tips. However, we'll come back to the American fridge freezer in a minute. Now let's look at the island. Oh dear. As you can see, quite small. It doesn't look right in the room. It's completely out of proportion. It even looks like an afterthought. Yes, it's a room big enough to put something in the middle of it, but that island is far too small. There is a bar on the reverse, so that conforms, that's good. You're keeping the people who are eating out of the main preparation kitchen. But there's another problem with that bar when I show you the photograph that you'll see really doesn't conform to what we want to achieve. So let's move on now to the new plan. This is how we change the kitchen. Now, as you can see, fundamentally it's a completely different shape. As opposed to an L shape with a small island in the middle, we've got two rungs, both running the same way, one on the top wall, and the island is completely gone and has changed into what we call a peninsula. In effect, it's an island that's joined to the wall. Now, we do this an awful lot. When people want islands, we do try to talk them into peninsulas, because basically it does actually give you more room, but you are still managing to fill the middle of the room. Now, looking at the individual items, top right hand side, you'll see it says oven combi drawers. There we have a built-in oven with a microwave over the top built in, so we've got the microwave off the worktop. To the right of the oven is a tall fridge housing. So again, yes, we've conformed because we've put the two tall housings together on the end of a run. The sink is still under the window, but now we've got the dishwasher underneath the draining board of the sink, which again brings the dishwasher closer to the plumbing's all together, and it's really handy now if you're scraping residue off pans, just turn to one side, put the pan in the dishwasher, brilliant. Or if you empty the dishwasher and there's any residue water, you can tip it into the sink. Also, you will see that to the left hand side of the sink we now have worktop space. If you find you've got worktop space each side of a sink, but one of those worktops is bigger than the other, always try to put the sink bowl next to the larger worktop space, because that is in essence again your prep space, and going from prep to bowl is far better than going from prep over the draining board to the bowl. So keep the bowl close to that worktop space. Swinging round onto the peninsula, we have our hob on the peninsula. Now yes, it's only a stride away from the sink. We do try to get the hob sometimes on the same side of the kitchen as the sink, but if it's going anywhere else, try and make sure that it's just a turnaround so you're not walking too far with those pans. And similarly on this plan, you can see that to one side of the hob, if you're stood at the hob to your right hand side, we've got a large amount of worktop space. So again, when you're actually cooking at the hob, it isn't cramped, you've not got things all around it, you've plenty of room to spread out. The bar for this kitchen is on the bottom there. You can see the 3 stools. Whoever sat there is kept completely out of the working kitchen. In fact, the working kitchen is a protected zone. Anybody walking through from the entry door to the dining room or sitting at the table doesn't have to walk through the kitchen. It's like a protected harbour. So anybody working there hasn't got people squeezing past them all the time. Let's look then at the actual before picture of this kitchen. This is what we looked at when we came to buy the house. Now here you can see quite clearly that we're looking at a range cooker. The point I made about the worktop space between the hob top and the sink is obvious here. It's quite small. You can just see the island to your right hand side in the foreground there. But what this picture also shows you is how the wall cupboards are crowding the windows. The windows aren't huge, but if you look at this particular photograph, you can see you've got a little wall cupboard to the left of the range cooker, then a big open space for the cooker hood, another little wall cupboard between the hood and the window, and then they continue round to the other window on the other wall. But it's very bitty, and that window is enclosed completely with these wall cupboards. And this is a look that we try to avoid. Similarly, you can also see that the wall cupboards don't go up to the ceiling, and the gap that's left just is simply just a dirt trap. So again, that really ought to be filled up to the ceiling. Looking at the same run in the new design. Now, before we start talking about this new design and the photographs we've taken of it, you've got to start considering colours. We're talking about design here today. These are our colour and style choices. They may not suit you. I can well imagine some people saying, oh, black kitchen. Ugh. What we're looking at really today are the design differences between the old and the new. You, of course, will be superimposing your own colours, your own styles onto this design. So we're looking at this design now across. It's the same shot taken across to the sink run. There's no range cooker anymore. You can see that the oven is now built in at waist height with a microwave over the top of it, well away from the entry door, which is over to the left there. You can just about see it. It's also adjacent to the other tall housing in this kitchen, which is a very large fridge. So the two tall housings are together in a corner and they don't dominate the kitchen. The sink bowl is under the window as it was before, but now you can see that to the left of the sink bowl we have worktop space. Enough worktop space to chop your veg, to rinse your veg, and to do a lot of your preparation work. We've dispensed with wall cupboards. We do have a tambour shutter on the left hand side as a decorative item and somewhere to shut the door and hide toasters, mixers, scales, etc. But there are no actual wall cupboards. The window is now framed by nothing but cladding, wall cladding. We've done a black wall cladding, and the white window really stands out, and it becomes an important part of the actual aesthetics of the room. It's not any longer crowded by those wall cupboards. It flows much better. And yes, you can see above the housing and above the tambour shutter, we have filled to the ceiling, so it's a uniform finish, no awkward gaps to clean, and the whole run looks an awful lot more streamlined. Back to the before picture. Now we're looking across from the back of the island, and you can see now that this particular island is really out of proportion with the room. The other thing we don't like about it, it's a quartz, or I think it's a granite worktop, and it overhangs at the back to form the bar. But for some reason they have put a chrome leg holding it up. There's no need, as long as the overhang isn't more than 300 millimeters, there's no need for a chrome leg, and that actually restricts how many people can sit at it. In actual fact, only 2 people could sit at this bar. Yes, it's in the right place, but the island is far too small. Looking at the same shot across now, you can see the peninsula. Now, as you can see, we didn't actually stage this photograph, we just took it. It's got a breakfast bowl, pens and papers and iPads plonked on the worktop, so it is not a staged photograph. This is a kitchen very much in use. But we're now looking across the same way. The island is completely gone, and we have a very long and very wide peninsula unit. The bar is on the reverse, and you can see we've used quite a thick chunky timber on the bar, which actually stands up from the main white worktop that we've used, which is Corian. By splitting the thicknesses, a large surface doesn't look quite so flat and boring. It adds quite a bit of interest. So if you are putting a bar on an island or a peninsula, consider doing different thicknesses of surface. You can see the hob down to the right hand side. Now this is a self-venting hob, so there's no need for a cooker hood hanging down, which would have really detracted from the overall look of this design. You can also see a huge area of worktop space. So if you stood at the hob to your right hand side, you've got all this glorious worktop space, which we actually use as our main prep surface because it's only a turnaround and you've got your sink right behind you. So straight away you see here that the peninsula is in proportion to the size of the room, the bar is on the reverse, and we've got the hob on the peninsula with great preparation space right next to it. Finally, this is the bottom end of the room. On the original kitchen, you can see that here there was the American fridge freezer that we mentioned. Now, this isn't one of our top 10 tips. I mean, we can hardly say to you, oh, for goodness sake, don't have an American fridge freezer. But I have to say, it's one of our pet hates. Purely visual, the great machines, lots of capacity, and yes, you've got your ice dispenser and your drinks dispenser in the door, but we just don't think they fit that well with streamlined fitted kitchens, and we do everything we can to try to design them out of our designs. The tall housings are together, yes, that's fine. The window though is still a little bit cramped in our opinion, and the dishwasher, which is under that window, is far too far away from the sink. Looking at the same shot, now you'll see the peninsula comes off that wall. You can see the bar now will sit 3 or 4 people, not just the 2 people before. There are no cupboards on that wall at all. We've left it completely free. We've simply clad it with the black that we've used for a lot of the kitchen, but we've created a usable wall space. So on that wall, hanging from brackets, are spice racks, knife block holders, cookery book holders, herb gardens, and shelf and hanging space. So we've used the wall, but it doesn't dominate the room anymore with tall housings and wall cupboards. And again, the window is allowed to breathe a lot more. You'll notice again the self-venting hob, so there's no need for that cooker hood hanging over the top. And I think from this particular picture, you can see if we had to hang a cooker hood down from the ceiling, it would really have ruined the overall impression of this kitchen. And when you sat at the bar, having a cooker hood hanging down in front of you wouldn't have been that great. So once again, here we have the before and afters. So there we go. That's how we used our top 10 tips to design our own kitchen, transforming it from what it was to what it is today. And it really works for us. I do stress it works for us. Everybody's individual, all our clients are individual, and the whole point of kitchen design is have a basis of how you want to approach it, i.e. the top 10 tips, but you then adapt it to suit yourself. We adapt it to suit our clients, and sometimes some of those ideas just don't apply, so you have to be flexible, and sometimes the room itself won't allow you to do all of the things that we are suggesting. But I do hope that has helped. And yes, there are other ideas that I think you can come up with, but frankly, at this stage, if you use those top 10 tips when you're designing your kitchen, I think that you'll end up with the perfect kitchen for you. Thank you very much for listening. If you've got any comments at all, please put them in the box below. We will get back to you. And thanks for watching. Goodbye.